cascading style sheet allows you to apply styles to your documents. A cascading style sheet is basically instructions for your document. It tells your document what types of font to apply to your document, what colors to use, as well as other styles. But what is a style? A style in Dreamweaver refers to either an HTML style or a style definition in a cascading style sheet. Of course, in this lesson, we're going to strictly talk about CSS style. Style definitions contain information about the text font, white space surrounding the text, the color and size of the text, and other attributes such as border, shading, alignment, and so forth. You can apply a style to a range of text, an entire page, an entire website, or an image. A style can be defined by class or ID attributes inside the tags. So here's an example of a style. You can use a style to change the appearance of all text in your document that is tagged H1. And if you recall from earlier in this course, H1 is a header that's used at the beginning of a section. For example, you could make all headers tagged H1 appear in Times New Roman, green font. You can make the body of your text on every page, on one page, or in just one section appear as Calibri bold-faced or Arial. You do all of this by applying style sheets. This is a quicker, more efficient way to apply style rather than always using HTML. And don't fret if this all sounds confusing right now. And also don't worry if you don't know how to write CSS code or don't think that you can learn it. To be successful using CSS in Dreamweaver, you only have to know how CSS works, and then be able to navigate through and use the features Dreamweaver provides for creating CSS. Dreamweaver will do all the writing of the code for you. So let's learn about how to create style sheets. In learning to create style sheets, it's important that you also know what purpose they serve. For that reason, we're going to teach you by actually doing. In other words, in this section of the lesson, we're going to teach you to create a style sheet by actually creating one. That way, you not only learn how to do it, but start to understand exactly how they work and how you can use them. So to start with, I've created a basic document in Dreamweaver. All I did was open a new HTML document and start typing, just as you learned to do in Lesson 2. So go ahead and type a few paragraphs into your HTML document. What I've done here is just pasted in a few paragraphs of lorem ipsum, which if you don't know, is Latin text that's used as a general filler for design. Now right now in my document, there aren't any styles applied. We're going to learn how to apply those now. To start applying styles, go to the Property Inspector and click on Page Properties. You'll now see the Appearance CSS dialog box. As you can see, the dialog box is chock full of styles that you can apply. You can see font type, font size, text color, background color, and the list goes on. You could use HTML for these styles, but why bother when you can create a style sheet? It's really easier once you get used to it. Now follow these steps in your document. First, we're going to change the page font to Cambria. Of course, you can change it to anything you want. We're just using this page font as an example. Next, change the size, which is the text size, to small. And as you can see, you could also use a numeric value for the size. Now change the text color to 666666 and the background color to CCCCCC. And if you wanted to add a background image, you would select that in the background image section, but we're going to leave that blank for now so that everything's more visible. Click on Apply, and then click OK. Now you can see the difference in your document. And to see how these styles were applied and to start to get a feel for CSS, go to Split View so that you can see the code and the design. So you can see if we scroll up, here's our paragraph text with our HTML breaks between paragraphs and the way the styles are applied. Now notice here on line 6 where it notes the CSS and how the styles are applied in the head portion of the document that will affect the entire page. Whereas with plain HTML, font color, size, and so forth, it would have been applied in the body portion. You can also see that the properties listed for the page are divided into two groups. One group is for the body and contains TD or table data, and TH, table header. Inside this group is the properties for the font and the table cells, as well as their content. In the other group is simply the body and the properties for the body. And you can also see that the background color is listed. Now if you look at this section right here, it might look like Pig Latin to you. Learning to understand the format of CSS code can make learning and using CSS easier for you. That said, let's take a brief look at the format used for CSS in hopes that we can decode the code for you. While it's not important that you learn how to write CSS code to use Dreamweaver, it can be helpful to at least understand the basics. So let's focus just on this selected portion right now. This tells what elements will be styled within the declaration. So for example, here body, TD, and TH are the selectors. Selectors are always separated by commas. This tells us that the body, TD, and TH will be styled in the declaration. The declaration is contained within curly braces, like these. And declarations are separated by semicolons. Looking at this again, we see the font family, font size, and the color are all established, and you can see they're separated with the semicolons there. These are the styles or declarations of style that are being applied to the selector portion, body, TD, and TH. You can also apply class and ID using the selector portion, then the declaration. And a quick note about ID, class, and tag styles. ID selectors only apply to one element in your document. In other words, you might use an ID selector to underline a sentence. The class selector is used to create styles that can be applied on your page as many times as you like. They're ideal for formatting elements of a page such as photo captions. Tag selectors alter the rules of HTML tags. You can use them to alter the position, appearance, and so forth of HTML tags. In CSS, div tags create sections in your document, and they replace HTML tables. Now let's talk a little bit about the CSS Styles panel and editing styles. The CSS Styles pane is located under Window, CSS Styles. You can use the CSS Styles panel to create and edit styles in your document. So shown here, you can see the summary of styles for the current document. You can see the font we selected, the font size, and you simply double-click on any style to edit it. You can see if we wanted to change our font, we get a drag-down list of other fonts we can change. Now a note to CC users, in Dreamweaver CC, the CSS Styles panel is replaced by the CSS Designer panel, which is shown here. Now when you use CSS in Dreamweaver, you can create internal, external, or inline styles. If you use external style sheets, they are saved as a separate file inside your website folder. You can even create a folder just for external style sheets, like you did for images, and name it CSS. When you create external style sheets, you can attach multiple style sheets to one page or use a combination of the options we just mentioned. So let's talk about the three types of style sheets. An internal style means the CSS code is in the head area, right here, at the top of your HTML page. The styles you choose to apply will only be on that page. And as we said earlier, external styles are stored in a separate .css file that's linked to in the code for your page. You can apply several .css files to one page, or you can apply one .css file to several pages. And inline styles apply only to the element to which they're attached in the document. And they're probably the least useful of the three style sheet options. You can choose if you want to create an internal, external, or inline style as you edit or create CSS rules for your document. So far in this lesson, the styles we learned about have been relative to the active document. In other words, the styles were defined in the head tag of the document. We used page properties to set these properties. Whenever you use page properties, your CSS will automatically be embedded in the document. This is a perfectly acceptable way to create styles to apply to pages. However, the best way to apply styles to pages is by using external style sheets. So let's look back at our example document here. And we're going to create an external style sheet for this document. First, I'm going to select this lorem ipsum text, which I'd like to be my page header. If you're using Dreamweaver CS6, go to the CSS Styles panel and click on New CSS Rule. And you can see this dialog box is opened. In this dialog box, you have options to create a new CSS rule. If you click the down arrow in the Selector Type category, you'll be presented with these options so that you can choose your selector: class, ID, tag, and compound. We'll discuss ID and class later in this lesson, but at this time we're going to choose tag, which refers to HTML. And as you can see, the selector name was already filled in for us based on our highlighted text. Now go down to rule definition. You can choose whether you want to apply it to the current document or create a new style sheet file. We want to create a new style sheet file. So then click OK, and the Save Style Sheet dialog box will now open. So name your style and click Save. We'll name ours New Style, and save that. And then the CSS Rule Definition dialog box will open, and this is what that looks like. Now you can go ahead and enter all the styles that you want. So I'm going to say I want it medium, and I'd like the font weight to be bold. So you can play with that, add whatever options you want. Maybe you want an underline as well. So then click OK. Now if you look back in here at your code, you'll see the reference to your style sheet. A note to CC users: the process for creating an external style sheet in Dreamweaver CC is a little bit different. First, go ahead and select the header text as we did earlier, and go to the CSS Designer panel. Click the plus sign beside source and click Add a new CSS file. This is what the dialog box will look like when it opens. Click on Browse and choose the location where you want to save the file, which will be inside your root folder, and then enter a name for the file. And then click Save. Make sure that link is checked, like shown here, and then click OK, and your new CSS style sheet will appear in the panel. Next, select your source, which will be the new .css file you just created. Select the CSS component that you want to add to the style sheet. In our case, it's the text in H1. Now go to the CSS Designer panel again and click the plus sign beside selectors that you see here. This will add the CSS component to the selectors area in the CSS Designer panel, which is what is shown here. Now look at properties, which is shown right here. The row of buttons at the top allow you to apply styles. Mouse over the buttons to learn what kind of styles they'll let you apply. We would be clicking the button with the T in it to format the text. And change the color of the H1 text to green. Now on line 18 in this snapshot, you can see the link to our new style sheet. You can also see that our text has changed to green. If we were to delete line 18, the text would change back to black. That's because we've deleted the attached external style sheet that made the font green. Now you can also use a style sheet that's already been created and attach it to your document. Start by going back to the CSS Styles panel and click on Attach Style Sheet. You'd find the style sheet on your computer by clicking the Browse button. You can choose to link to the CSS file or import it to your current root folder. Then select the media. You can see the choices it gives you here. You can also choose to use some predefined style sheets that Dreamweaver provides by clicking on the Sample Style Sheets link. And we'll talk about that more in the next section. And then you would simply click OK once you've selected your style sheet. And a note to CC users: in Dreamweaver CC, go to the CSS Designer panel and click the plus sign next to Sources, then click Attach Existing CSS File. Then you would click Browse to find the file. We currently don't have any style sheets attached. The one we attached earlier in this lesson was removed from our code, so go ahead and reattach it to see how to do that. And then click OK when you've found the style sheet you want attached. The styles from the style sheet are then applied to your document. Now Dreamweaver gives you the ability to use CSS even if you don't know how to write the code. To align elements and text on your page using CSS, go to the Property Inspector and click on CSS over at the far left. Next, select the elements that you want to align. Then you would choose if you want to align it to the left, center, right, or justify in the Property Inspector, and we'll center it. Like we've said, and we'll say it again, You don't need to know how to write CSS to use it in Dreamweaver. To add styles to your pages, use the CSS Styles panel or CSS Designer panel in CC. To add a new rule or new style, go back into your CSS panel and click on the New Rule button located on the bottom right side of the panel here. And then you'll see the CSS Rule dialog box. A note to CC users: to reach the CSS Rule definition dialog box in CC, click on the rule you want to edit in CSS Designer, then go to the Property Inspector and click the Edit Rule button. Now, if you don't know how to write CSS code, Dreamweaver makes it easy to use it anyway. CSS in Dreamweaver is broken down into categories to make it simple to find the style you want and then apply it using a style sheet. When you save a new style and get that CSS Rule definition box, you can see the categories in the CSS Rule definition dialog box shown here. The type category relates to your text. It includes font, of course. The background category relates to the background of your pages. The block category relates to spacing and alignment for text. The box category contains settings for positioning and spacing. This is ideal for creating settings to go with the div tags. The border category relates to border. The list category is for creating lists, just as we did with HTML earlier in this course. The positioning category lets you alter the way elements are positioned on your page. The extensions category is where you'll find filters and cursor options. The transition category allows you to manage interactive effects. Now, one tag we'll want to cover in this course, which we've talked about just briefly already, is the div tag. The div tag gets rid of the need for HTML tables in designing web pages. The div tag is used to create areas for content on our page and creates virtual containers or boxes. You can create a div tag anywhere on your page by going to the Insert tab, going to Common, and then click Insert Div Tag. And then click OK in the Insert Div dialog box. Now if you look and see, the text is now in its own virtual box, much like we use to make HTML tables in web design. Another thing you'll want to learn is CSS transitions. CSS transitions allow you to apply special interactive effects to your pages. For example, you can have a hyperlink that starts out in blue font. When someone mouses over it, it transitions to orange. Here's how to use the Transitions panel to create special effects. So first, create a style for an element on your page. For example, here we've changed the color of our header. This will be the beginning of the animation. Now open the Transitions panel by going to Window, CSS Transitions. Click on the plus sign in the panel, which is the New Transition button. In Target Rule, select the style you just created. In Transition On menu, select a trigger. I'm going to say when you hover over it. Next, choose Use the same transition for all properties, or use a different transition for each property. We're going to choose to use the same. Type a duration for the animation in the duration box. Use S for seconds or ms for milliseconds. Just to make it clear, I'm going to do a duration of 3 seconds. Now type a number in the delay box. Select an animation speed from the timing function menu. And in the property menu, choose the property that you want to animate. And we want to do the color. So it'll ask you to choose your color and then click Create Transition. So if we go live to preview that, we can hover over it and you can see the transition that happens. It now changes our text color according to the parameters that we've set. So as with everything in Dreamweaver, the most important thing is to practice. CSS is more complicated to use in Dreamweaver than plain HTML. However, it's not so complicated that you can't master it. Take time to practice creating CSS documents. The more you practice designing pages